So why do we practice? Why do we devote hours every day to sitting in silence? Why do we work so hard to train our mind? Why do we willingly look at these disturbing patterns that keep arising? Why do we do this? It's simple. We want the big E. Enlightenment. It's real. It's not just a story. It's what we are. It's what all of this is. All of these worlds are contained within me, just as they are contained within you. We practice so we can come face to face with that ultimate reality, so we can fully embody that which we are, enlightenment. There are lots and lots of teachers who share different aspects of the path and make all sorts of promises. They promise great power or wealth or the ideal relationship or the perfect home. All these worldly things. But that's not what I do. Those are interesting hooks into the path. You know, have the buff body. Do these practices. And then you too can have a black belt. And those are great things to aspire to have a high-paying job that makes you happy, that you're comfortable doing, that contributes positive things to the world. Having a beautiful home, having excellent relationships, having a healthy and strong body. But for me, that was never enough. I was only interested in enlightenment. I wanted to know truth. The power of changing and formatting this world. In other words, manipulating the world, physical matter, was interesting, but it doesn't bring you happiness. You can have a lot of difficulty if you cannot function in the world. Make it next to impossible to actually go after the bigger questions, because there's so much suffering associated with not being able to take care of oneself and one's body. So it's important to pay attention to those aspects of life. We can't just bypass the physical world and the physical needs that we have. So don't misunderstand me. I had to learn how to do those things, even though I just wanted to sit and meditate. But at the same time, I was not willing or able to run off into a cave and just sit and meditate, as some have done in the past. I met a really interesting Swami Shwashat, I'm probably butchering his name, in India, who is very young when his motion towards enlightenment began. He was a very young child, and he ran off into the mountains of India and literally slept in caves next to tigers. He explained the tigers were on the other side of the cave. They did not snuggle. But his yearning was so strong that he could not have a normal childhood and grow up in society. He just left and had to go discover truth for himself. But then once he did, guess what? He had to come back. Came back into the world, and then had to learn how to function and communicate and deal with the body. So even as we focus in on only enlightenment, it's not an excuse to bypass what needs to be done. If anything, it's a surrender to that. So I cannot promise you anything other than light if you do these practices of Trikaya Buddhism, because that's what they're geared towards, is to help you awaken to Buddha nature, to help you recognize that you are this pure and perfect light, and so is everyone else, which can be challenging to see. But as we meditate, as we train the mind in mindfulness, as we contemplate these attachments that arise and divert us from our focus on enlightenment, the light of our awareness starts to melt these attachments and brings us deeper into light. And as we go through this process, we have different realizations. And one of the most profound is from the emptiness, the treasury of spaciousness. All that is wanted spontaneously arises. From spaciousness, all that is wanted spontaneously arises. That's a clue as to how this reality works. That's a clue as to why we train the mind. Because all that is wanted spontaneously arises. And so, as we're practicing, we are kind, we are generous, not out of some intellectual moral obligation, but because we understand this is how everything comes to be. So if we are hooked into our worldly desires, where we only care about me and mine, then what is wanted is not always beneficial. It can be quite harmful. And it will arise. And then, as you practice more, you become more aware, you see the infinite interconnection of everything, that you are not separate from those you deem a threat. You are not separate from those who you feel are harmful. So if you wish them harm, you are wishing yourself harm. And Sometimes we have to learn the hard way. We have to touch the hot stove to figure out that it's going to burn us. But once we have that realization, the little e, the epiphany, that, oh, when I touch something hot, it can burn me. We learn in ourselves at a very physical, visceral level that, oh, when it's hits a certain temperature, we automatically pull back. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to reason it out. We don't have to go into deep levels of feeling or perception. We just know that, oh, that's going to burn me. And the body just knows to pull back. This same thing happens with even our deepest thoughts when we practice, when we focus only on enlightenment. We start to recognize quite quickly that a particular thought train has a harmful effect. And we pull back from it immediately. This is the training that we go through. And there are all these wonderful side effects from training in this way, even before you get to the big E. Our relationships get smoother and brighter and happier and healthier. We won't put up with abuse because we know to allow someone else to abuse us is to create harm. So if we can't change the situation, we remove ourselves. We don't go on a crusade and try to change everyone else, because that doesn't work. That would be like telling your fingers to bend backwards. Do it. It's not their nature. They only bend this way. But we don't have to contribute to harm. So we don't. When we practice, our minds get stronger. And that's required if you wish to dive into the planes of light, into the higher and higher states of consciousness. Your mind must be very, very strong. Because otherwise, you just shut down. You might even fall asleep, literally. I've had people do that in here before. You have these really bright, intense meditations where we just open up into these highest levels of light and people just instantly fall asleep. It's a self-defense mechanism because the mind must be trained to hold these higher gradations of light. Otherwise, they just shut down. It's like, in Zen they talk about the cup being too full. You keep pouring tea into it and it just overflows and spills on the floor and makes a big mess. So we train the mind to be strong, to hold many different aspects of reality all at once. And this has very beneficial applications in the world of career, because a lot of people can't do that. Our educational system for a long time has been all about study for the test. And you memorize what's going to be on the test, and then you get an A on the test, and then you're promoted to the next. And then you study for the test, you memorize what's on the test, get an A, promoted to the next. But that strengthens the mind in a certain way, but it's very limited and rigid. So what we're doing on the path is we're opening beyond what might be on the test. We're looking at, how does this actually work in whatever subject we're studying? We're looking at, how are these things related? When I was in high school in the 80s, I had a wonderful geometry teacher. And instead of just having us memorize formulas, she actually had us make art. We had to make something with a circle and nails and string. And the assignment was to make sure that we wound up with a perfect circle in the center of our string when we threaded the string around the nails. And that required the formula and the math. So it's about allowing ourselves to learn beyond what might be on the test, beyond what might be expected of you at a particular job, beyond what you might need to know to fulfill a certain task. We reach into that sense of curiosity of, how does all this work? Because really that is the essence of the path, is we're looking for truth. And it doesn't work if somebody just tells you. Like, I already gave you a big clue, but it probably didn't really do anything. But by going through this training, by meditating and learning to hold your mind still, and allowing yourself to be open to the expanse that is beyond thought, not in a forceful, constipated kind of, I'm going to hold it, tortured kind of way, but just allowing this relaxed, open awareness that is beyond thought to permeate your mind and your body and your entire being and world. And then getting up off of the meditation cushion and functioning from that place. And again, it starts with our basic mindfulness, paying attention. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? How is this working? And noticing when we start to spin out into very limited, constricted points of view, where we get all worked up and we're like, no, it needs to be this way. Or, oh my goodness, this is so wrong. And from a certain point of view, yes, you're probably entirely righteously correct. It is horribly wrong. And yet, there's enlightenment there. Remember, enlightenment contains all. This is the tantric part of our practice, the reconciliation of opposites, where we look at something that we absolutely hate and say that should not exist, and yet it does, and having to come to terms with that. To understand that, oh, that exists in me. in some form. It may not be expressed in the same way that you see it in the world, but that essence of that quality is within you. And you get to see, by watching the world, what happens when that particular quality is expressed. And if we're practicing, we don't push it away. We understand that there is no away. That we need to accept and confront and come to terms with these different aspects. Yet at the same time, we don't give them full reign to run over us. So it's tricky. The path is challenging, and it's not very popular. Most people are just interested in the manipulation of their physical life, their emotional life, their mental life, the worldliness of it all. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just where they're at. But there are certain people, who have a certain proclivity towards truth, where nothing else will do. But no, I need to know. I need to not just know that, but know it. And not just in an intellectual way, not just through our mental formations, not just through our physical being, or our feelings, or our perceptions, or even our consciousness, but through the alignment of all of these aggregates with pure and perfect awareness, where our attention is threaded through all the different aspects of our being and lines up perfectly with enlightenment. And at that point, it clicks. And you realize that, oh, it's always been this way. It's never been any other. And yes, there's still the human aspects that appear to be struggle. But the doorway to that awareness, or that, this is where words break down. There's a certain quality of attention that is always aware. So even as we go through the worldly life, there is this pure and perfect enlightenment pouring through us, where we know. And it's not that we have to prove it or shove it into anyone's face. It's just there. And it's beautiful, and it's pure, and it's perfect. And it always has been, always will be. It is compassion, the movement of light. And it allows this interaction to happen. where we're here having this discussion, which I know might seem one-sided, but it's really not. Because all of this is within me, just as it is within you. So along the way, there will be many, many little e's, these little epiphanies, where suddenly you just get something. You get the impermanence of it, where things are arising and falling away. And you see that the clinging just creates pain. And there's this little epiphany that happens that, oh, well, what would happen if I didn't cling to that? If I just allowed myself to be in this spacious, open awareness as this world is arising and falling away, as these things in my life are arising and falling away, as the very cells of my body are arising and falling away. And when you have just a moment of that, this little epiphany of, oh, there's no suffering when there's no clinging. And then, of course, the mind jumps in and says, okay, I'm going to force myself not to cling. But guess what? You're clinging to not clinging. So be gentle. Don't try to force it. But when you do have one of these little e's, the little epiphanies that happen, celebrate them, enjoy them. Notice them. Say, oh, wow, that's really cool. And return to your practice. Keep going. Just keep going. And then there'll be another epiphany. And another. And another. And then there will be times where what you think you are completely dissolves. This you, this I, me, mine. That'll be a bigger E. We call those the samadhis. When there's just this syntactical break that's irreversible. Even though when you kind of return to your ordinary worldly awareness, there's this little niggling, like, well, no, I know, like, I'm clinging to this, but I know that clinging isn't real. It can feel really weird. Just fair warning. It can be very, very confusing. So allow space for that. Allow space for the confusion. Because you'll be like, I know that the clinging's not real, but yet here I am clinging. Why do I keep doing that? Why do I keep torturing myself? Because you haven't woken up all the way. It's like you're still in bed and, you know, kind of the light's filtering in and you're in that twilight sleep where there's that presence of dream. Oh, it's so real. But yet, here you are in your bedroom and the light's coming in. And this can last for a long time. Lifetimes even. Many people, that's enough. They decide, oh, I'm awake now, I know. And they'll sell tickets. tell people how wonderful it is and create a whole persona around it. And they will pretend not to cling. But quietly, there'll be this very quiet desperation, very quiet heartbreak, because there's still clinging. There's still someone clinging. But out of all those who reach that stage, there's just a few that will recognize that's not enough. This little e isn't enough, because you still consider that a little e. Even though other people might look at that and say, oh, that's the big E. That's it. You see into the oneness. You feel the unity of existence. And it's beautiful and it's blissful. And it's so happy. But there's still this little scratch in the record. This little sense that, oh, I'm still here. And if we keep practicing, if we're humble, we recognize, oh, wait, maybe there's some subtle clinging happening. There's something going on. So we return to beginner practice. We meditate, we practice mindfulness, we practice contemplation. We observe, and we continue training our mind to live in the highest, brightest, most beautiful way that we possibly can. Because it feels right, because it feels bright and beautiful, and we share this with others. Not because we're trying to get anything from them, but because it feels good to share. We start to live a life that is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. There's just this essential goodness that we feel within our own being, and we recognize in everyone else's being. And we live that. Even though we have this suffering, we have this clinging that keeps weighing on us. So we keep practicing. And then one day, perhaps, and I don't know how it works, I can't tell you, I just know that it does, is there's a crack. One friend described it as, you're on a train track and you jump the tracks. And suddenly there's no train and there's no tracks. And it's a totally different type of samadhi, because there is no you. There is no them. There's just this. And no matter how hard you look for you, for me, for mine, it's not there. There's just this. And it's perfect. There's still all the worldly stuff happening. You still gotta eat, still gotta go to the bathroom, still gotta sleep, still gotta exercise, still gotta pay rent. All those things still happen. Still gotta interact with people. But there's no one interacting with anyone. And this is wonderful. Call it Nirvikapa Samadhi. And then suddenly, it's gone. Something happened. There's no more train track. There's no more train. But you're you again. Here I am. I'm back here again. And that can be hard. That was hard. because it's intense spiritual pain. Because there you were gone. There was no one here at all. And then now here you are again with all your stuff. And it's heavy. And yet there's this memory of that pure and perfect peace, that unconditioned peace. And this can go on for years. For me, it was like a decade of just spontaneously slipping into this nothing everythingness without any way of controlling it. And that was where the clinging was, because I wanted to control it. Like there must be that felt really wonderful. That was that was it. So of course I wanted to possess it, to own it, to control it. And so I had to go through that until I finally understood and finally knew viscerally that I couldn't control it. That I had to surrender completely, knowing that I may never experience that again. And be willing to be okay with that, to reconcile those opposites. Be like, oh, what if I never am in that stateless state ever again? What if this is what my life would just be? Knowing that stateless state, but having that glass wall, unable to shatter it. And that is, for me anyways, it may be different for everyone else, but for me that was one of the most challenging reconciliations to make. But eventually I did. And I was okay. Not knowing. Just allowing light to do with me what it will. And if it meant that I would be completely worldly and just immersed in the senses, the physicality of it all, even though my body is painful, or if I would be in supreme ecstasy and bliss, I was okay with either one. And my life was just service. I was here to be of service. And so that's what I did. That's what I do. And then one day, quite unexpectedly, the mirror shattered. And there is only light. And it's pure and perfect. And I see that everyone is that light. All of this is contained within me, just as it is within you. There's no difference. The only difference is that you think there's a difference. And I can tell you until I'm blue in the face that there's no difference. That you are that pure, undifferentiated light. You are ecstasy and bliss and unreasonable joy and unconditioned peace. And that we are here in this world playing because out of spaciousness, everything that is wanted spontaneously arises. But I can't make you see it. I can't make you know it. That's for you to have that journey home. And so I hope you will keep going. I hope you will keep practicing, because I can tell you it's worth it. I won't tell you that there's not pain, because there is. I won't tell you there isn't a very addictive pleasure, because there is. But beyond both pleasure and pain, there is something so much more that you can't even, there's no words for. So I hope you will practice, and we'll meditate now.